This is a video presentation of Chapter 2, Section 10, Equivalent Fractions and Decimals, found in the 7th grade textbook. Our objective here is to write fractions and decimals and vice versa, and determine whether a decimal is terminating or repeating. So, yesterday we did one of the good conversions in the world of math that involves fractions and decimals, but it was all fractions. We went from mixed number to improper fraction, and we did improper fraction to mixed number. And we can obviously chain that together with what we're about to encounter here today. So, let's start off with some definitions here. Terminating decimal, that's a decimal that comes to an end. That's your 0.5 and your 0.75s and your 0.875s. They have a finite terminating spot. It ends somewhere. All right? Contrast that with the idea of a repeating decimal. That's a decimal that repeats a pattern forever. That's your 0.333333 thing that we know is 1/3 is a fraction, or your 0.66666666 thing, which we know is 2/3 is a fraction. Those guys are repeating decimals. They do not have a finite spot in the end. They just keep going. We might write them with a bar, so we don't have to write it forever, right? But they're still a repeating decimal. All right, they don't have an end point. So obviously, since they're throwing decimal definitions at us now, all of a sudden we throw decimals into the mix, which you knew from me reading the lesson objective. So that's what we're going to see here, is conversions between fractions now and decimals. All right, number one here, they're asking us to write the fraction as a decimal and round to the nearest hundredth if necessary. Now, I know some of you are a little bit panicked by what you see on the screen already, because you've got a lot of long division there. You don't have to do long division here. As a matter of fact, I would encourage you to use a calculator here. All right? When you want to convert a fraction into a decimal, you divide. Numerator divided by the denominator. Now, some people have in their heads that it's always got to be big number divided by small number. That's wrong. That's not how we convert a fraction into a decimal. It's just top number divided by the bottom. The numerator divided by the denominator. So in part A there, 1/4, that's exactly what you're going to do. You're going to do 1 divided by 4. Now, obviously, they show you the work here, all right, which is fine, but the answer here is 0.25, and you can verify that. Check your calculator. Do 1 divided by 4 right now. If you got an answer of 4, you did the wrong thing. You did 4 divided by 1. That's not what I asked you to do. Do the numerator divided by the denominator. 1 divided by 4. 1 divided by 4 is 0.25. In B there, 9/5, again, you're going to divide. 9 divided by 5. Right? 9 divided by 5 is 1.8. Right? That's your answer. Again, verify it on your calculator. If you have something else, you probably did 5 divided by 9. Again, we're always doing numerator divided by denominator. Now, part C gives us a chance to do one little calculator explanation here. 5/3. So you're going to do 5 divided by 3. Well, 5 divided by 3 on your calculator, some calculators anyway, is going to show up as something like 1.666666666, and then all of a sudden there's going to be a 7. And you're going to be sitting there going, what gives? Why is that possible? Here's the thing. It's not really possible. You can't repeat and then all of a sudden throw a 7 after it like that. What calculators do is they have to be programmed to stop. All right? When they hit the end of that screen, they got to stop. All right? If they don't stop, when they try to calculate a repeating decimal, it would just keep going forever. All right? And because it would just keep trying to divide until it found an end. Well, we know there is no end here. All right? So what the calculator does is, after it gets to that probably 10th digit or 12th digit, depending on how many digits your screen takes up, is it says, okay, figure out the 13th number. Well, we know because this is 1.6666 and keeps going sixes, all right? And let's just say, to keep it easy, that it's only going to display this amount of things on the screen, all right? Because the calculator has to say, hey, stop, all right? The way it's going to do that is it's going to say, okay, time to round so we can stop. Well, this next number here being a 6 causes that to jump up, again, simply because of rounding. So then all of a sudden the calculator displays something like 1.666666667. That's the only reason why that's there, right? Is because the calculator has to be programmed to stop. So once it gets to the last digit, it goes to the next one and says, hey, what are you? Are you bigger than 5? Are you equal to 5? Round up. If you're less than 5, stay where you are, and let's finish this problem. And that's what your calculators are doing. So when you see this answer, you have to be smart enough to know what this really means. That this really means 1.6 repeating. When you write this, 1.6 repeating with a 7 after it, or when you write out this whole guy, right, it's a dead giveaway to when you're using a calculator and not using it well, right? Because you have to understand what the calculator is doing to give the proper answer. So yes, what I'm saying right now that some of you are hearing that is absolutely true, the calculator gave me a wrong answer. Yeah, it did, because it's got a limit too. It's doing what it's programmed to do. This is not the real answer. This here, this 1.6 repeating with the bar over the 6, that's the real answer there. Now, the directions here say round to the nearest hundred. So that's exactly what they're going to do here. And this should actually say 1.67. Right, rounding to the nearest hundred. Okay? So, fraction to a decimal, really easy. Divide. Top number divided by bottom number, and call it good. All right. Now what they're going to have us do is change fractions into a decimal in a little bit different way. Right? One of the things that's really nice is sometimes we can set these up just like a place value or potentially just like a test score. And the reason I say that's nice is because you all know when the test is out of 100 points, that's the easiest one to figure out your percentage for. All right? That's where they're going here now. All right? In case you've forgotten, let me refresh your memory. When we're talking about place values after a decimal point, the first place value is tenths, and then it goes hundredths, and then there's thousandths, and 10,000ths, and 100,000ths, and so on and so forth. Well, think about a fraction like this. How would you say that out loud? Think about what you would say. 2/10. Okay. Now we'll grab a calculator and do 2 divided by 10. What do you get? You get 0.2. Well, notice where the 2 is in terms of the place value. It's in the tenths place. So you're saying that 2/10 means there's 2 in the tenths place. That's absolutely what I'm saying. All right, so if I can get my fraction to have a denominator that matches up with one of these place values, then I know where the numerator fits in terms of the decimal. So, let's look at this one. 4/5 doesn't help me because it's fifths. There is no fifth place. There's tenths, there's hundredths, there's thousandths, but there's no fifths. But if we double this fraction, meaning to multiply both by 2, what do I have? I have 8/10. Think about what we just said. That means I'm going to insert an 8 in the tenths place. Look at what I write as my final answer here. 8 in the tenths place. 0.8. Perfect. All right? And again, you can use that same logic for the hundredths place or the thousandths place or the 10,000ths place or whatever place, and it'll work out great. Here's 37/50. Okay? So, no 50th place. place, but if I double this guy, multiply the top and the bottom, the numerator and denominator by 2, I end up with 74 100ths. Okay. So that means I've got to have 74, and it's going to end in the hundredths place. Well, that means the 4 has to be there, and the 7 would have to go there in the only other place in front. 0.74. 4 is in the hundredths place. All right, 74 ends in the hundredths place. If you want to think of it that way, look at our answer. 0.74. Perfect. Okay, other way. All right, now we're going to take the decimal and write it as a fraction. And it's a good thing we've just reviewed our place values, because that's absolutely what we need here to solve these questions. All right, start off with 0.018 here. What you want to do when you start here to convert here is identify the place value of the last digit. So in part A, I'd be talking about the 8. Well, the 8 is in the thousandths place. So the denominator of my fraction is going to be 1,000. Okay. Again, that's simply based on the place value of the last digit. Right now, for some reason they wrote a 0 at the end, and you know after the decimal, all right, at the very end there, you wouldn't need that, you wouldn't count that. All right? What I mean is that they wrote something odd like 0.250. That obviously is not needed. That's the same as 0.25. You're a smart group of folks. You already know that. All right. So then we would be looking at that hundredths place. But let's not worry about that. Let's go back to what we're talking about. So 0.018, 8 is in the thousandths place. So when I'm asked to write this as a fraction, the denominator here is 1,000 because it's in the thousandths place. The numerator is simply this guy here, but get rid of the decimal. If I get rid of the decimal, that's 0018 or 18. So that's 18 over 1,000. That is the fractional answer. All right. Now, directions here force me to go a little bit further because it says simplest form. All right. Well, we know how to change a fraction to simplest form, though, because we've already seen that. All right. We just saw that yesterday. Remember, that means we chop out the greatest common factor. So the greatest common factor of 18 and 1,000 is 2. Lucky you, everybody's favorite division. 18 divided by 2 is 9. 1,000 divided by 2 is 500. 9 500ths. If you don't believe it, check it. Do 9 divided by 500 on the calculator. I bet you get 0.018. Now, to work the same way for 1.55, identify the place value of the last digit. Well, the 5 is in the hundredths place, so the denominator of my fraction is 100. The top is this number without the point. Well, if I get rid of the point, that's 155. So it's 155 over 100. Right. There's my fraction, but directions said simplest form, so now I'm going to have to chop. So we're going to find the greatest common factor of 155 and 100 and chop that amount out. Well, that amount is 5. So I'm dividing 5 out of both the numerator and the denominator. And when I do that, 155 divided by 5 is 31. 100 divided by 5 is 20. 31 20ths. And as you can see, what they've done from here to here is they've converted this improper fraction into a mixed number. Now, can you go directly from here to there? Yes, you can. All right? Treat this as 1 and 0.55 instead, like it's two separate things. 5 still ends in the hundredths place. The top of that fraction is 55. All right? Because, again, if I ignore the decimal, again, remember, I'm treating this one as separate, 55 over 100. Stick the 1 back in front, 1 and 55 100ths, and then reduce, and you still end up with 1 and 11 20ths. The nice thing about using this technique that we used in A and B, though, is it's the same rule for each. This way, you've got to separate it and then treat it in parts, and that's a whole different rule to remember. Not that it's that difficult, it's just another rule to remember. Okay, number 4. A football player completed 1,546 of 3,875 passes he attempted. find his completion rate, write your answer as a decimal rounded to the nearest 1,000. So as you can see, now even they've given up on the division. They went right to a calculator here. As a fraction, this is 1546 over 3875. Right, so they went to the calculator to divide it, as you can see, and they got 0.398967749. We're supposed to round to the nearest thousand, which means the last digit that's going to show up is right now that 8. But we have to round appropriately. Since the next number is a 9, that's going to cause me to round up. Remember, 5 and up, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 there, causes that digit to jump up. 4, 3, 2, 1 means we just truncate. We cut off everything after the 8, and that's it. It doesn't change. All right, and that's 0.399 because, again, we're rounding up. So his completion rate is 0.399. All right, so last question here. They're asking me to write the fraction as a decimal, and we're supposed to round to the nearest hundredth if necessary. So again, great calculator problem. You're going to do 6 divided by 5 on that calculator. 6 divided by 5 is 1.2. 6/5 is equivalent to 1.2.